tutorial so far, you should have this set up ready, copied into your class file lines. Now mine looks a bit different because this is the full plugin, but yours should just have the if we just skip through that, plugin info, not in a folder because I've just put it like this, that you created in your original template, and the file lines class that you created. It's going to give you a quick run through of what everything is then and how you can use it to build your own functions. Excuse me. Now this is standard C# programming here. You've got to include what you want to use. Now I'm not going to go into excessive detail because there's plenty of YouTube videos, and if you're pinching code snippets and whatnot to create your plugins, I'm sure they'll explain what everything is there. What you do have to include though is in every single one using ubot plugin. That line there, that's a requirement for the API to work. Namespace, again this is the advanced file plugin, so I've called it advanced file. Whatever your plugin's called, I'd use the same namespace across all your functions. It doesn't matter, to make sure it's something that can be used. Class, now you'll see here this says ubot function. Now I'm not going to go into excessive details of how that all works and how the API works and everything. All you need to know that is that if it's a function, you need that there. And again, if you use this code that so I've got a bit of a cold. If you use this code that I've done there, it should act as a pretty good template for creating functions. Now, one important thing that you need to be aware of is the class is called file lines. Now, part I'll come to later, the reading of the parameters needs to be called the same. So you see that's called the same. Now if I change that to 2, you see I get an error there because that doesn't exist. So that, and scroll up, and the class name have to match. So the first one that we come to, sorry, I'll just cover this here. This is just declaring that the return value, which we'll be using later on, is a string and it's private just for this class. First value that you'll need to change from if you're using this code to make your own is the category. So you can see here the category which is in the toolbar, and the drop downs there is the category that you'll be using. So that's in the advanced file function category. So I could change that to whatever I want. I could call it test or whatever you want to call it. And the function name, the next one down, is file number of lines. So obviously that's the function name, so when you search for it, so for example loop and etc., their function name. So when we do this in ubot, it's obviously the function, or you could select it from the system tree down there, is a container. In this instance we've put false, and for most parts of the stuff you'll do with functions, that'll be correct. A container, what ubot class is as a container, is this. So you can drop other commands in. So if I'd put this as a container, then it'd have this area here for putting other commands in. It's quite in-depth really explaining how that functionality works, and I don't use it that much, to be honest. I believe there's a few issues with it from testing, but I will in later videos explain how you can use it. Again, this is the return value, the parameters for down there, and the return value to ubot which we'll be using. the return value type. Now I'm returning it as a string. Your options are, if I just click this here, string, ubot list, ubot variable. I don't think you can use the table as a return value. All that'll do is, if you change that, is this will be returned as a list if you were to choose list. So that would fit in there and could be a list. But all we want it as is a string because it's a number. ubot version. Here you've got the option. Let's find them. Professional, developer, and whatnot. Unless ubot specify your plugin can only be for certain user groups, most of the time you'll just use standard. This is the part where you read from ubot. So if you look here, it says location. That's that there. So the options you've got there is ubot list, table, or variable. And again, if I was to change that, all that would do it would allow only accept a list, table, or variable. Now this public void execute is the actual C# code that gets executed and returned or controls ubot. So your code needs to go here or trigger classes and whatnot from here. I'm not going to go into that level of detail at the minute. So I just tidy this up. So you can see here I'm declaring string path, and again I'm not going to go too in depth on C# because it can be you can do separate learning through videos for that. So the string path I'm declaring is parameters, which is a ubot declaration, and location. So as you can see that there, that's location, and I'm reading the parameters. So that the value that you have in here will be read to this string path. Now this is just a pretty basic C# command, and what I'm basically doing is I'm using the path to read the file number of lines and then get a count, and then that's stored in this integer value here. Now what I'm doing, this return value, which as you can see is what we've declared as the return value, because it's a function, it must return something. I'm declaring it as test, and because it's an integer, I'm converting that to a string to go back into ubot, and as you can see I've declared the return value type as a string. Now in later videos because I think that's what some people struggle with, is a lot of occasions you've got to convert back to strings for the return into ubot. So I'll cover some basic C# stuff of how to convert values and whatnot in later videos, but that's about it. It's fairly simple to use, and again you can use this template and just tweak things to test and see what you can get working. What you do need to do to then use the plugin in ubot is build solution. I'm in the middle of adding new features to this, so you won't get all these warnings. But that should just come up with built and complete. Because I'm halfway through adding new functions to this, it's brought up a few errors it won't do for you. Then what you do is in the folder path where you've saved this project, go into the debug folder and the DLL should be in there, and then you can just copy that straight into ubot, ready to use. And I think that's about it for this first tutorial. Thank you, bye.